Hey everybody, this is John Turk. I'm Julia's husband, and I'm here today to talk to you about my experience with Scientology. And this is going to be a post that I'm doing on her channel, and I'll be doing more of them in the future, so stay tuned to watch. All right, so back in 1999, it was shortly after I left the police department, I decided to go to Los Angeles and pursue an acting career. Now, at that time, I had just finished most of the Mortal Kombat games that I was doing, and I thought I wanted to try and promote my acting career a little more. So I thought going to LA would be a good way to do that, and I just kind of packed everything up and went out there. I got in my car and I drove and ended up at a house from a guy from Chicago that I knew, and he had a bunch of roommates, and I just kind of crashed there. As time went on, I got kind of lonely. People would leave, they would go home, and it was the holidays, and no one was there at this time. So it was December of 1999. And I decided to go out one night. It was about a week before Christmas. And I ended up meeting a bunch of people out at one of the clubs and just kind of struck up a conversation. And one of the guys there said, "Hey man, what are you doing for the holidays?" I said, "Well, nothing really. I'm sticking around and I'm going to be here. I'm not going back to Chicago." And he said, "Well, if you're bored or if you want to kind of enjoy yourself and meet some more friends, we're going to have a party at my house, and you're more than welcome to join us." I said, "Oh, thanks, man." We exchanged numbers, and I went home and contemplated whether or not I wanted to go. And as time went on and Christmas got closer, I started to get lonely, and thought, maybe I will go to this party. It seems like it'd be fun. All the people I met were really cool people. They didn't seem like, strange or anything like that. So I called him up, and his name was Bill, and I just decided, "Hey, man, it's John. I met you the other night. You mentioned inviting me over to your house for the holidays. I definitely want to take you up on that." And, we gave me the address, and I went over there on Christmas. And I remember pulling up to the driveway, and it was a beautiful house. It had a nice long driveway, big trees all around it. I could tell there was a lot of money there. And cars all over the place, so it was also crowded. And I walked up to the door, and a lady answered, and she seemed like a mom, she just looked like it. She had a kid in her arm, and there were a bunch of kids running around. It just looked like it was a regular family type party. So she invited me in, and I told her who I was and who I knew, and just, invited me to go in the house and just mingle. And I did, and I ended up running into Bill, and we were just chatting it up, and he said, "Hey man, just go through the house and have fun. Just, eat whatever you want, drink whatever you want. We'll catch up later." And I said, "All right." So I walked around the whole night just meeting people, and I had a great time. Everyone was really friendly and nice. The kids were all, very playful and just really looked like healthy young kids. And as the night went on, I went up to Bill, and we started, talking and chatting, and he mentioned that he wanted to talk to me before I would leave that night. I said, "Okay, cool." So about 10 minutes before I was going to go, I went up to him and I said, "Hey, I'm going to head out in about 10 minutes or so. You mentioned you wanted to chat." And he said, yeah, let's go back in my office. So we went back in his office. It was a beautiful office. It was like all that solid wood like you'd see in an attorney's office. It's a deep, dark oak, cherry wood. Looked like somewhere where you'd want to sit down and, perform all your business. And so we started chatting. I sat across from him in this big mahogany desk, and he said to me, "Hey, what religion are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not any religion." And at this time, I wasn't a Christian. I was really not a believer. I told him, I was raised by a Muslim father, and I had a Christian mother, and, they didn't agree on religion, and so I wasn't going to follow any religion. So I just felt maybe there was a higher power, but I wasn't sure. And I just figured, hey, I live my life. I'm not a murderer. I'm not a thief. I'm a good person. I'll be all right. And that's what I told him. And he said, "Well, we're Scientologists, and I think you would fit in really well with us. In fact, you mentioned you're, pursuing the acting industry, and we're really tied into the acting industry, and we could help you out a lot." And I said, "Wow, that's cool." I, got into a conversation about what they would do and how they would promote me, and it sounded very legit, very inviting, and I wanted to know more. And so as we talked, he started to mention that if I got involved with Scientology, that they would also be acting like my agent, so I would have to give a percentage of my pay to them. And I said, "Okay, that sounds reasonable, especially since if I'm getting work and things like that." And so we just kind of discussed it a little bit more, and he said we can iron out all the particulars. And I didn't feel like I was joining a religion. It felt like I was joining a company. So it felt kind of strange to me. So that's one of the things I brought up. I said, well, you guys are a religion. How do you get involved in the film industry? And he said that, the process that they have is really good to help people bring out their innermost, creativity and just be good actors. And the guy named L. Ron Hubbard, I knew a little bit about Scientology from the 70s. He was all over the TV and how he could promote this like inner thought and this, consciousness that you can't get just on Earth. You can bring your mind into the universe and things like that. So I had an idea what it was. So he kind of expanded on that. And I thought, okay. So I was asking him, I said, so you're not like a religion? He says, oh, no, we're a religion. We believe in Christianity. We believe in this. And they just kind of seemed like they believed in a lot of things and that there was a higher power, but they didn't say they were like, one God and anything like that. So I thought about it. I said, okay, whatever, And so I was mentioning, I'll get up and leave and we'll talk more. And he said, well, hang on a second. I go, okay, yeah, what's up? And he said, here. And he puts this stack of papers in front of me. And it's like papers like this thick. And I'm looking at that and I look at him. And I look at the papers and what's this? He said, well, that's our contract. And I said, well, a contract for a religion? I'm not understanding this. He says, well, we are a religion, so to speak. He said, but we also are your agents, like I said, and we're going to get a percentage of your pay. And I said, well, how much? He says, well, it's all in the contract, And I just looked at him and I looked at the contract again. I said, well, I can't sign anything right now. I have to take that back and read it all. He says, what, you don't trust me? And I said, well, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't know what's in the paperwork. I just met you. I really don't know you either. I said, yeah, in a way, it's not that I don't trust you. I'm just being smart. And he says, okay. And he grabs half the stack and peels off half the stack of the contract. And now I've got half of the contract left. And I look down and I look at him and I said, I'm not understanding. He says, well, you mentioned it makes you a little nervous, all these papers. I pulled off half the contract and you can just sign it and there's only that half applies. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, it still doesn't make any sense. I can't just, sign this thing here. I'm going to have to take my time. Now, mind you, I just left the police department. I was investigating fraud cases when I was there. So I was very familiar with scams and all these kind of things. And he said, well, how about this? And he grabs that rest of the stack and he pulls off half that's left. And there's about this much left now, a smaller quarter amount of what was there in the beginning. And I looked again and I started laughing. I said, wow. I said, now we got hardly anything left. And he said, yeah. He says, so just sign the back of it and we'll get started. And I looked at him and I said, I still got to take it back and read it. In fact, why don't you give me the rest of that? I'm going to read the whole thing. And he looks at me, not saying anything, grabs the remaining piece of the papers, pulls them off. And now the only thing left is the signature page. And I just looked down at the signature page and I looked at him and I said, it's just a signature page. He goes, yeah, we're just going to get rid of everything. And this is just an honest, kind of like a handshake that we're going to do business together. And I looked down and I said, this is just not making sense to me. I said, I don't understand this. Why don't we just shake hands and I'll walk out? And he said, no, we got to get you to sign something. It's really important you sign this. And I said, I'm just not comfortable. And he looked at me and paused for a second. He said, I don't think it's that the paper's bothering you, the thickness of the contract, because I've gotten rid of everything. He says, I just don't know if you're interested. And, we really want people to be interested in Scientology and really be, in it with us. And I just looked at him and I said, well, how about if I just think about it? I'll take the rest of these papers with me. And he was like, okay, that's fine. And I could just tell his whole demeanor changed. So I pretty much walked out the door and left. And I knew at that point, the minute I left, I wasn't going to join Scientology at that point. It was just too weird. So about a week goes by and I get a phone call and it's this guy, Bill. And he says, hey man, he goes, so I'm calling to see if you want to, join up with us. I said, I gave it more thought and I'm just really not interested. There's just too much going on there. And I think I'll just pursue things on my own. And so he tries to talk me into it and just giving me more lines of, garbage I'm not believing. And eventually I just tell him, I'm just going to move on, don't call me again, blah, blah, blah. So we hang up and I just go on with my life. I'm pursuing my acting career. And a few weeks goes by and this Bill guy calls me again. I recognize the number and hey man, what's going on? not knowing what he's going to call or if he's going to ask me again or what. I just thought it was weird. He's calling me again. John, it's Bill. I just been really thinking about you, and I think you're making a big mistake. And I said, I told you already, I'm not making a big mistake. I'm not interested. I don't want to get involved in your organization. I wanted to say cult, but I just didn't want to go that way. But he said, well, again, I think you're just making a big mistake, and I want you to really think about it and consider it. I said, hey, man, I've thought about it. We've already had this discussion several times now. Don't call me again. And hung up. And so about 6 months goes by, and I'm just kind of doing my thing again in LA, and I'm still in LA, and my phone rings. And I'm recognizing the number, but I'm not putting two and two together because it had been so long. But I got a bad vibe from the number, so I thought, this number looks familiar to me, and I don't get a good feeling. So I answered it, and sure enough, right away I heard the voice, and I go, that's why I had a bad feeling. And he starts going through his whole spiel again, you should join us, we're a great organization, blah, blah, blah. And I just kind of sat there quiet, and he's like, are you there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm here. I said, man, don't call me again. I already told you I'm not interested. Do not call me again. And I hung up the phone. I was real stern with him. And so that was it. I didn't hear from him. And I continued in LA, and I ended up going home back to Chicago right around the end of 2000. So I had gotten there in the beginning of 99, and I was there for about a good year and a half. My mom had gotten sick that time. She had an aneurysm, and she ended up passing away. And I thought, it's a good idea if I stick home here in Chicago. Maybe this is a sign I should really be here for the family. And I just ended up staying. So I, got my life started back in Chicago. And here we are, fast forward to 2001, and it's May, and I ended up meeting my wife, Julia. And, our relationship gets, moving pretty fast. We're together now, so that was May. Fast forward to the end of 2001, her and I are just kind of sitting there hanging out. Now, mind you, I've moved. I got a different house. I got a different phone number. I moved again when I was in Chicago, bought a house, and I have a different phone number there too. And her and I are just kind of hanging out, and my phone rings. And I'm like, wow, it's an LA number. And so I answer the phone, and I hear, hey, John, what's going on? And right away, I knew it was this Bill guy. And now I'm getting this creepy feeling inside, thinking, man, I got a different phone number. I live in a different state. How on earth did this guy get my phone number? This is bizarre. And how bizarre is it? It's 2 years later, and I've already told him several times, don't call me. I'm not interested. And here we are. He's calling me again on a totally different phone number. So at one point, I was completely pissed off. At the other point, I was really creeped out. It was like this back and forth with myself. So Julia knows something's going on because she sees how I'm reacting on the phone. And he starts talking about Scientology again, how I'm making a mistake. And I'm like, hey, man, I said, listen, I don't know how you got my phone number, but I told you I'm not interested. And I said, how did you get my phone number? And he says, well, here at Scientology, we know a lot of people. We can find anything out. And I said, well, you know what? Here's what I'm going to tell you again for the last time. I said, lose my effing number. And I hung up the phone. And I never heard from him again. But it was just a very strange situation. And it kind of creeped me out in one way, but in another way, it completely angered me. And now that I'm a Christian, and I've been a Christian since 2009, I realize with Jesus, it's not provoking me or coercing me into being a Christian. Being a Christian is a relationship with Jesus. He wants you to have free will. He doesn't want to force you or coerce you into loving him, because that's not true love. That's not following a person or a God. When you're coerced into doing it, the real relationship, the real love happens when you choose to be there, when you're not coerced to be there. So know that if you are ever coerced into any religion, and I look at Islam the same way. My father was Muslim. So much of Islam is a coercion. And it's not what true love is. You have to be with someone that you want to be with, that you choose to be with. And it should be your own free will. And you know what? That can apply to a relationship. If you're a woman or if you're a man and someone's coercing you or paying you to be in a relationship, that's not love. What is that? So your relationship with God should be the same way. So I want to leave you with that thought and let you know that if you call out to Jesus and you tell him you want a relationship with him, you want to get to know him, amazing things will happen. And the best way to learn about Jesus is to read the Bible. And if you don't know where to start, because it is a big book, start in John. John is the first book of the Gospels, and John is Jesus' words. It's Jesus' ministry. It's everything you want to know about Jesus and what he says. Then the next one to read is Acts. Acts introduces the apostles. Acts talks about the resurrection, the Holy Spirit, and it introduces all these players. And then Romans is the next one you should read. Romans is great because it talks about the creed of a Christian, what it's like to be a Christian, and just go from there. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. And just, call out and reach out to God. Now, after you read those 3 books, I wrote a book called the Trinity Bible. And it has those 3 books in it with a brief introduction and a brief conclusion telling you where to go after you've read those 3 or what you need to do. My favorite Bible to read when I started was the New Believer's Bible by Greg Laurie. It's a great book and it explains a lot of things, especially to a new believer. And it's called the New Believer's Bible. So that's a great one to get to as well. I just want to let you know that I'm going to be doing more videos on Julia's channel here. And my next one is going to be about a past relationship that brought Julia and I together and what happened in that relationship to cause that to happen. All right, thanks for checking in, and we'll see you soon.